Kjære alle sammen, det en overordentlig stor glede å kunne ønske dere alle hjertelig velkommen til Skagens informasjonsmøte her i Stavanger. Jeg heter Ole Kristian Tronstad, og i kveld så har vi en ordentlig line-up til dere. Skal vi se, der vi. Vi starter med administrerende direktør Tim Warrington, som får åpne ballet og fortelle om fondene våre og litt om SKAGEN. Og så følger vi opp med forvalterne i SKAGEN Global og SKAGEN Kontiki, som skal, naturlig nok snakke om hvordan fondene deres håndterer situasjonen som vi i nå, og litt om fremtiden og markedsutsikter. Og så avslutter vi det hele med gode spareråd fra Kristen Kvame. Og jeg tror at jeg kan love dere noen nye innsikter i akkurat den sekvensen der også. Hvordan går det egentlig med Skagen om dagen? Hvordan håndterer fondene pandemi og nær sagt influensa? Det mye å bekymre seg for, og det skal Tim Warrington få lov å fortelle oss mer om. Så the stage is all yours, Tim.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I have a real sense of déjà vu standing here because I think it was the 3rd of March in 2020 when we all last met. And we know how that ended, so hopefully we're going to do better this time around. But it's very nice to see that so many of you have been able to come out this evening. I'll start with a very brief update, and I suppose I should really start with what is driving the financial markets in the year 2021 so far. I think we all experience that many countries now are starting to lift their COVID restrictions. And with that, we see that economies are getting quickly back to pre-pandemic levels. Of course, this in turn has pushed inflation higher, admittedly from very low levels. And of course, we are seeing that central banks are now beginning to hike their interest rates, as has happened here in Norway. And we know ahead that governments are set to start to reduce their monetary stimulus packages. I think it's also fair to say that over the past few years, we've talked a lot about style discrepancies, the old value and growth discussion, which I don't particularly like myself. It's interesting that this year, certainly value started very strongly in the first part of the year, and that has now closed over the course of the summer. But I think it's interesting to observe that at the moment, we see more difference between geographies, particularly between the outperformance of the developed markets over particularly the emerging markets. And I think a large part of this can be put down to what we're calling the Chinese crackdown, where the Chinese authorities have unveiled their plan to tighten the economy with greater regulation. And of course, this has spooked many international investors. But even if interest rates are now slowly starting to pick up, yields remain at a very low level, and investors who are on the hunt for returns have few alternatives other than to invest in the equity markets. And this undoubtedly has been an important factor in driving the equity markets ever higher. So, how have we been doing in SKAGEN funds? Let's start with the equity funds. SKAGEN Global and SKAGEN Focus have both had very strong absolute and relative returns. This, despite the fact that they are looking for stocks in quite different parts of the market. And I think this is testament to the very strong stock-picking skills in both teams. We know that the emerging markets started the year strongly, but then fell back as a result of the Chinese crackdown. And against this backdrop, SKAGEN Kontiki has been ahead of the benchmark for much of the year, but has fallen back slightly recently. SKAGEN Vext has had a strong year, primarily down to stock picking, and in particular, companies within energy and materials have ensured that they remain well ahead of their respective benchmark. And then lastly, but by no means leastly, SKAGEN M2, the listed real estate fund. Listed real estate has been amongst the sectors that was hardest hit during the course of the pandemic. However, as restrictions have lifted, they have been able to recoup their losses, and we see the fund having a nice rally over the course of the summer, and I hope that you were able to benefit from that. Stock picking in the fund has been strong, and the fund is behind benchmark slightly, but primarily due to an underweight in the United States. Turning then to our fixed income funds. Interest rates are remaining low, as already noted, and this provides a very low level of running yield. SKAGEN Høyrente is in positive territory, while SKAGEN Avkastning is slightly down, primarily due to increasing rates in the government bond part of the portfolio. SKAGEN Tellus, as you know, is unhedged against the Norwegian krone, and while the fund is ahead of its benchmark, the absolute return is negative due to the strengthening of the Norwegian krone. And then finally, to turn to our funds of funds, the SKAGEN Select group of funds. These clearly have benefited from the very strong performance of both Global and Focused, and indeed SKAGEN Vext, and also from the fact that the funds have tilted the emerging markets exposure more towards frontier markets. And we see an outperformance in the frontier markets, which is some 20% better than that of the emerging markets. In the fixed income heavy select funds, that's the 15 and the 30 funds, the managers reduced the duration in the fixed income part of the portfolios at the end of 2020, and that has evidently turned out to be very beneficial in 21 with interest rates on the rise. Turning then to SKAGEN. Those of you who watched or participated in our New Year's conference may remember that these were the themes that I offered for 2021. And I think most of these have played out much as we expected. The pandemic is certainly still with us, although perhaps I, for one, overestimated the potential disconnect between Wall Street, the capital markets, and Main Street, the economy. And it certainly appears to be less of a challenge than we might have feared. Sustainability is still firmly at the center of things, and indeed next week sees the beginning of the Council on the Parties, the Conference of the Parties, which begins in Glasgow at the weekend, and we wish them well. Within SKAGEN, we've implemented the new European Sustainable Finance Regulation in the funds here in Norway, and that sees us expanding the sustainability process in our investing. And of course, it's been exciting to see this year our value funds responding to a more favorable economic backdrop. But of course, for many of us in SKAGEN, 2021 will be remembered as a year in which we lost our founder, our friend, and indeed our guru, Christopher Stensrud. And he is dearly missed by many of us. So, what is to come in the balance of 2021 and looking ahead to next year? Good people lie at the heart of SKAGEN, and I'm pleased to say that we've been able to focus on bringing the SKAGEN team through the pandemic in good shape, and they certainly are in good shape currently. We also see the importance of providing all of you with timely advice and good follow-up, and we're pleased that many of you are asking for that advice, which we consider to be particularly important. So we have expanded the team here in Norway, so there are more people available to look after you and to serve you. We've added additional capacity, reflecting our new adoption of a more expanded sustainability process in our investing, and I hope you will see that both in the portfolios and also in our reporting on them. We're investing now quite heavily in our digital platform, And certainly I, for one, am looking forward to seeing a new app that allows us to do interesting things. We hope that that will be out early next year. And to better onboarding and functionality in the digital platform that many of you use. And then finally, we do keep a close eye on our fee levels. I know that's very close to all our hearts. And I'm pleased to say that we will be adjusting the fees in SKAGEN Global at the end of this year. What we are doing is adding an annual high watermark. That gives you, the clients, additional protection, and it means we cannot charge a performance fee until such time as we have passed the previous net asset value in the fund. And I hope you will appreciate that change. Anyway, I think that is enough for me, and it's probably time to hand over the floor to the smart people who you've actually come to listen to. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Now, before we hand over to the smarter people, Tim, I just have a few questions for you. There are obviously quite a few things in the pipeline for SKAGEN going forward. What do you think our clients, the people in this room, will appreciate the most?
Well, I think, Ole Christian, I'm a client first and foremost, and I always am interested in the return in the funds. It's what I'm following most closely. So I'm very excited to see what has been a very stable investment team over the recent years, what they're able to do with what can be a more exciting investment climate for the balance of the year and into 2021. So that's one area where I'm certainly very interested. And
obviously the digital space as well, where hopefully we'll have lots of things, lots of good news coming. What are you most excited about in the upcoming year?
I think I'm excited to see how you all as clients respond to the changes we're making in the advisory process, where we're trying to get closer to understanding what your needs are and to be able to advise you better. I do think that advice is sometimes overlooked, the value of it. It can make a big difference to portfolio performance. And what I do see when I look at the trading patterns of clients is I see too many people making decisions at the wrong times, very often for reasons which are understandable, but they are the wrong reasons. And I think the way to prevent that is good advice and regular follow-up and discussion with your advisor. So I hope that you will find that exciting. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing if it has a very positive effect on the performance that all of you receive from your investments with us.
Thank you very much, Tim. Now.